Welcome to everyone joining us. I'm still going to give folks another minute or two to get logged in and on Zoom with us. But while I do that, I'll get this morning if you're on the West Coast, or early afternoon if you're in the East, like Rachel. My name is Katie. I'm from Chevalier's Books, and thank you for joining us from home, wherever you are. I myself am clearly not in the store. I'm joining us from home too. We are excited to get to welcome you all to this fun event. When it was first pitched to us, it was pitched in part as a Pride Month event, and it's so exciting to get to celebrate queer fiction for young readers, something that I know when I was young there was not a lot of. And so to get to do that, and to get to do that in a format where lots of people can join us, and it's public, and it's not just quietly being out to a few folks that you trust, is such a delight. So it's a wonderful time to be with you all here in 2021. Couple pieces of business. This is being recorded. So if you know somebody who missed out and wants to catch up, you can find it on our YouTube channel in a couple days when it gets uploaded. And if you have questions, you can, throughout this time, put them in the chat or use the Q&A function if you're familiar with that and Zoom webinars. And then finally, I will put links in the chat for how you can purchase books from us. Rachel has done signed book plates, so you'll get a signed copy. Robbie is in Los Angeles and is going to come by to actually sign books in our store for you if you decide to order something from us. So I'll put those links in the chat throughout the day. And then I think that's it for business. So now it is my great pleasure to introduce to you the people that you're actually here to see. First up, let me introduce Robbie Couch, who will be in conversation with Rachael Lippincott today. His debut book, The Sky Blues, just recently came out and has been getting rave reviews. And we are so excited to have it, to be able to have signed copies, and to have him here today in conversation with Rachael Lippincott, here to talk about her newest book, The Lucky List. She has written and co-written several other books, probably best known for 5 Feet Apart. And we are so thrilled to have her joining us this morning, all the way from Pennsylvania. So without further ado, I am going to turn this over to the two of them.
Yay. Thank you so much, Katie. And welcome, Rachel.
Hi, Robbie. Thank you.
Hello. I am so excited for this event. And I was just telling Rachel before we got started that there was a little bit of a blip in my travel schedule. And so we had to express ship the Lucky List to me. And I was sort of nervous about not being able to finish it on time because I just had a few days. I can confirm that was not an issue. I blew through this book so fast. I am low-key obsessed with it. I can't even tell you how many times my heartstrings were just completely tugged, ripped to shreds almost. It's so great, and I loved it so much. And I will also say it's the perfect summertime read. It's June, and I feel like everyone's getting back out there post-COVID, and I'm oh, the summer vibes in this are just so just to kind of get things started, I was hoping you could maybe just give us a quick summary on what The Lucky List is about.
Definitely. So The Lucky List is about a girl named Emily whose life is in shambles the summer before her senior year of high school. She has wrecked things with her boyfriend, Matt. Her best friend, Kira, is away for the summer at a super wild and crazy sleepaway camp that she goes to every summer. Her dad is selling her childhood home, and she just feels super lost at this particular point in her life. And while packing up boxes, since they're moving out, she discovers her late mother's summer bucket list, and she decides to duplicate it with Blake, who is the swoony new girl in town. So as they check items off the list, Emily starts to feel a connection again to her mom, but her connection to Blake also deepens into something that she wasn't expecting. So yeah.
It's so cute. As you can tell, the layers of emotion and like things happening to Emily are just, it's so emotionally packed and like visceral, and just I just ate this book up so much. But I am always interested to learn how writers come up with the ideas for their books. I know for me, it's rarely like an A to B to C to D sort of thing in my mind. It's usually a jumble of like B to D to A to C or whatever. And
Same.
yeah, I'm wondering if there was like an idea that sparked the concept of the book, or was it more kind of like putting the puzzle pieces together? Or can you kind of talk about what inspired the Lucky List?
Yeah, I think it was definitely more the puzzle piece one. My wife's family, every year they go to like Lake Baptiste up in Canada, and I was fortunate enough to go 2 years, maybe even I think 3 years ago. It's such a blur with 2020. So 3 years ago, and I was kind of like sitting on the back balcony, and it was sunset and everything was super picturesque over this really gorgeous lake. And I just had this like moment where I was like, I need to like write a book set in the summer. Like I just really wanted to like capture like the magic of summer, especially like when you're a high schooler, and you have that feeling on the last day of school that's like, the summer's going to be amazing. So much is going to happen, so much change and growth is possible. So yeah, it was definitely, I think, more of a jumble. I had that moment. And then very shortly after, like, I just had individual scenes that kind of came to me, like the bonfire scene that's in the book. And, just kind of the image of like her finding this list in this box. And then also just kind of the character of Emily, this girl that has so much going on in her life and is at kind of such a low point, having the ability over the course of a summer to really become the person that she so desperately wants to be. So yeah, it was a lot of elements, A to D to B to C, all the way to Z at some point. But yeah, it was definitely all over the place.
Yeah. No, and I love that the summer vibes was in part why you were inspired to write it, because it's so something that kind of struck me too was the idea of summer. I think when you're in high school is like this, it's like this such a big few months in a person's life, because it's sort of like a rebirth stage. It's like go into the next year, or like it's sort of a moment where you can kind of digest where you've been and who you want to become. And I think Emily is kind of she's at that crossroads, right, where she's like feeling I don't want to give away any spoilers, but there's been some not great things that have happened. And it's sort of like, how is she going to turn this around? So I love that about the book. Another big theme of the book that I got was this idea of sort of like living fearlessly, or at least not letting fear stop you from being who you are or doing what you want to do, which I think is so powerful and important. And I was sort of wondering if that was a concept or a theme that from the beginning was sort of baked into the idea, or was it something that kind of like naturally became a theme as the story unfolded? Because it's such an important part of Emily's journey. And I was wondering at what point did that kind of get baked into the story?
Yeah, I don't think it was maybe like one of the initial things that kind of when I was first originally thinking about the idea, but then it super became like a huge part of the book, because there were just so many parts, so many things, so many fears that she was facing throughout the summer, from like just items on the list, like getting a tattoo can be kind of scary if it's your first time getting a tattoo, to just like, coming into your own and becoming the person you want to be, and discovering your sexuality and sharing that part of yourself with other people, just all of those kind of things as well. So yeah, I think really over the course of writing the book, it really became just the heartbeat in a lot of ways of all of these different elements, all of these different things coming together.
Yeah. And especially, I think especially for young queer people, the idea of getting over that fear of being yourself it's something that is universal for all teenagers in certain ways, but I think especially being LGBTQ, for a lot of young queer people, it's that added layer of, am I going to be accepted? And even just Emily's own internal battles of like knowing who she is. I think it's such a crucial part of the story, and one that I certainly could relate to, for sure.
Same. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you're dead on with that. Yeah, and I think I think just like the character of Emily as she is going through it, you know, she does have the fear that kind of stops her from maybe her initial discovery. You know, she has the experience of her mom going through cancer. And similar to me, that was very much my own story. My mom was diagnosed with cancer at about the same time that I started having that like aha moment about my sexuality. And it was very much the same, where it was like I was afraid to like add this other layer to this incredibly fraught time. But yeah, that was definitely, I think, a really big element of the story.
Wow, yeah. Oh, that's so, oh my gosh, I could start crying right now. Are, was there any, so let's just like take a second to appreciate Huckabee. Because Huckabee, like literally since like a page into chapter 1, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm from a small town in Michigan,
Definitely.
from like the rural Rust Belt, and there's so much about Huckabee that just was totally relatable. I think to anyone who grew up in small town America, there's
Sure.
like that mix of, it's like certainly not a perfect place, like it has its faults, but it's also so charming, and there's such deep roots, and everyone knows each other, and like just the generations of connectiveness, like it was something that really, it was like, oh my gosh, I totally get this town. So can you tell me a little bit about like, I'm assuming that you pulled from your own experiences growing up in Pennsylvania, was that the case?
Yeah, no, it was definitely like, I think that, I mean, it's totally a town. If you are from Pennsylvania, you can plunk it down anywhere and it's real. You know, I think everybody in Pennsylvania knows of a place just like Huckabee. It was kind of an intermix between the town that I grew up in and very much the town that my wife grew up in, which was like really rural, middle of
Mm.
nowhere for sure. And yeah, I totally just want to like capture the essence of like exactly what you said. You know, you have like the fairs and the tractor pulls and these crazy bingo nights, and
Yeah.
you know, you have like the really quaint, small, charming like inner town area with like bakeries and like old movie theaters, historic movie theaters, and you know, it has so much history. And yeah, it's just
Yeah.
a really cool place to be.
Yeah, and I loved like, especially like this, how specific and granular you got with the things that made it small town, like the tattoo parlor having like the like random holiday specials, like just any excuse to get people in the door to get a tattoo, like those sorts of things were just so, yeah, like I said, kind of specific and like hilarious and wonderful. And was there any specific things that you drew from your, like, was Nina's
Oh
based
my
off of a
God.
bakery in your upbringing, or like was the camping trip at the lake, was that something, or like was there anything that you really directly pulled from your own experience, or was it more just kind of like the general vibes that you pulled from the
Yeah,
story?
it was definitely, there were, yeah, like thinking about it, there are definitely a lot of things that I pulled from my own experience. There was a bakery kind of in the town that I grew up at that, like, you know, if I went into work with my mom to Center City and we took the train like an hour and a half to get there and we came back home, we'd always go to this one bakery and you could like smell, just similar to how
Oh,
I described Nina's, you can like smell the baked
yeah.
goods, and like it's just everybody just like is coming right to it because you just have to get a cookie or whatever they're cooking up at that point in time. Yeah, I like totally
Yeah.
got like a $45 Valentine's Day tattoo special. And it's one of my favorite tattoos. So that's another
Amazing.
element that's totally real, you
Oh
know,
my
and
God.
then just like smaller stuff, like the character of Emily's dad was like, it's super similar to like my wife's dad in the sense that like generations grew up in this town. He goes anywhere, everybody knows exactly who he is. But so a
Right.
lot of it was definitely just pulled from my own experience and things that I'd witnessed and, you know, just
Yeah.
living in small town Pennsylvania.
Yeah, no, I was almost mad at you for how well you described the smells of the bakery, because I'm kind of ridiculous and trying to do this intermittent fasting thing, and I'm not supposed to eat past 8. And I was reading the scene with the donut, it's like
Oh
describing
no,
the donuts, and I was like, I want a freaking donut so bad right now.
what a time
Uh,
to read it. Oh gosh.
I know. But also, I know you mentioned the bonfire scene earlier. Oh, again, no spoilers, but there's a bonfire scene that's just like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh. And there's so many scenes that are just so emotion packed. There's a bonfire scene. The other one that really stood out to me was the scene with her dad at Goodwill towards the end.
Oh,
So just like, oh my, like just so, oh my God. And I'm wondering if you had any, like, I guess it's like a two-part question.
mhm.
What was the most challenging part of the book or chapter of the book to write? And then what was the most fun or enjoyable or easiest chapter to write? Because I feel like it's this story is such an emotional roller coaster, and I'm wondering if that was reflected in the difficulty of actually writing it from your perspective.
Definitely. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Those two scenes, those were like, I think, two of the initial scenes that I had in my head when I was still kind of plotting the story that I knew had to be in there somewhere. Just like the image of like Emily like sifting through the racks at the Goodwill, which no spoilers, but I like grew up just thinking about it. And even the bonfire scene, like I like knew there would be a bonfire scene, but there was definitely like two roads that I could have taken, and I like ended up going one way. But yeah, I think the hardest scene I maybe had to write was in fact either that Goodwill scene, or honestly like quieter scenes than even that. Like I think the scene where maybe she found the list was also tricky to write, because I had like a lot packed in there and a lot of like just emotional beats that I wanted to hit, and also just like backstory at the same time. Like, you know, I introduced them a little bit to like the Huckabee Lake trip, and you know, she's like telling Blake all these things while they're kind of unpacking this box of like her mom's high school memorabilia and stuff. And then also like there's a scene at the end where she just like with her and her dad, and they kind of have a heart to heart, which they like really struggled to do for the last 3 years, and then also throughout the course of the book, that I think was also like not necessarily hard to write, but like I like revised it a lot of times just to get it hitting the right notes, I think. In terms of fun, I really liked writing the cliff jump scene. That one was super, I had a good time with that. And also the bingo scene right at the beginning, just because there were just a lot of different elements, and I love bingo, and I just loved being able to just kind of let loose and really, really describe the chaos of this small town. So yeah, that was a lot of fun to write.
Oh my gosh, yeah. But I think that is totally true what you mentioned with the more difficult scenes to write. Having scenes that are, and I just kind of had this realization as you were saying it, the scenes that are like so pivotal both in, okay, I have to get X, Y, and Z accomplished in like the next 3 pages, but also I have to hit these like specific emotional like high points or low points, like the combination of those two things of like, okay, I have to be very intentional with the plotting here, but also have the emotion make sense and feel authentic. Like, yeah. And there's, to your point, there's definitely a few scenes in your book that I felt like, oh yeah, like this was a moment that needed to happen. So
no, for sure. Yeah. I think a lot of times when people think like difficult scenes to write, they think it's like the most like action packed, intense, like a lot of characters, a lot of things involved, but a lot of times it's just like the quieter scenes, and trying to strive to like find the right balance and get everything that you want in. Yeah.
Right.
Really interesting.
Yeah, for sure. So if it wasn't obvious, I think you mentioned it earlier, the bucket lists are a big part of the story, which I love. I love a good bucket list. And so first question is, do you have an official bucket list, or have you ever had a bucket list?
Yeah, I don't now, but like actually like in the process of writing this, and also I think like because of the last like year and a half that we've all experienced, like part of me is like, it's time to like make a bucket list and like, you know, travel and like do all those things that like, you know, I've been thinking about doing for the last year and a half. Have I ever had a bucket list? Yes. Like some, like I made one, like I think in like middle school, and it was just like, no, like I think one of them was like climb Mount Everest, and I'm like, honey, like you have like metal in your back, most of your spine is metal, you are not climbing Mount Everest. So just like stuff like that. And also I think like I totally, like me and my best friend, like growing up like in high school, like at the start of every summer, we'd always kind of like make a list of things we wanted to do, like, you know, go to the beach and like go to a cool party in Philly, or like just stuff like that, you know, aspirations. So I'm really actually kind of looking forward to like maybe making a bucket list in the next few months.
Yeah, I know. I don't think I ever had like an official bucket list myself, but I always randomly had bucket list items throughout my life.
Yes.
I want to accomplish this at some point. I want to do that. Maybe it would help me actually do it if I made a literal list and I printed it on my wall or something. But I know I was thinking about that too, because I've always wanted to go to New Zealand, and I'm like, okay, the world's getting back to normal after COVID. Like we can start traveling in the next few months. Like maybe I should just commit to it and do it. So, and this book helped inspire me to commit to it. So
that's amazing. No, that'd be so cool to go to New Zealand.
Oh yeah, for sure. So on the topic of bucket lists, I love a really big part of the story, obviously, is Emily's mom's bucket list, which is printed on the back of the book. If anyone's curious, it's right there. And I was thinking we could do a fun thing, sort of like a little bit of a rapid fire Q&A, where
Love it.
we'll go through the bucket list items and see either if you've already done them or if you're interested in doing them. Does that sound good?
I'm
Sweet.
super excited. Yeah.
Hey, so I'll tweak a few of them because a few of them are really specific to the book, so I might tweak them to like apply to your life as opposed to
That's
Emily's life. But okay, so the first one on the list is get a tattoo. Do you have a tattoo?
I do. I have 4.5. I'm gonna say half because
Oh yeah, you just said you got one earlier in the
I did.
bin.
Yeah. So we're good. Yeah, I have 4.5. I also just got one like last month because my wife and I did do some of the bucket list items kind of like leading up to the release. But yeah, so I did just get another one last month, and my half of one was like a stick and poke that my best friend and I did when I was like 17, which was not smart. Go to a professional. And it's more of an amorphous blob than the crown that I was really hoping for. So, but it's there. It's permanently there. So
it's there. So is it like a mix between the four? Is it like a mix of just kind of like, oh, fun, this happened, and then like more meaningful tats, or is it more just like, whatever?
Yeah, it's definitely a good mix. There is the Valentine's Day one that I got, and it was like 2 wings on my ankle, which I really liked. This one, the one that I got recently, it's my wedding date, the date of my wedding in Roman numerals. And I do actually have, just get my jacket off real quick. It was not excellently done and the letters are blurring together, but I do actually have Emily's mom's tattoo on my actual body.
Wow. Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, I don't think anybody, I've never mentioned that like in any like promo kind of stuff or talking about it, but yeah, I actually have the Invincible Summer tattoo on my own body.
I love that quote. I actually wrote it down as I was reading that part because I was like, that quote is just the heartstrings. That's so good. Cool.
Yeah.
I have a tattoo of a well, I shouldn't say stupid, but an evergreen tree. And I liked it, and then I still like it. I don't have a tattoo regret. But one of my friends pointed out that it looked like a Christmas tree. And now people are like, will poke fun about like, yeah, you should get some ornaments on it or like put some white snow. And I'm like, shut up. But, but no, I might turn it in because it's a tree. So I might turn it into more of like a landscape, add some mountains, more tree. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
Cool. Yeah. I don't know what to do with this. Just like some of the letters, like the E at the end of Invincible is definitely a no now. So who's to say? But I'm keeping it.
It's the thought that counts. It's great.
For sure.
So for the next one on the list, on the list in the book, it's get over my fear of heights. So did you have a fear of heights? Is that something like real with you in your life or no?
Yes, no, that's definitely like real in my life. Like I love like flying a plane. I love like that heights, like a safe heights where I'm like, yeah, I'm not hopefully I'm gonna like fall or like anything like that. But no, definitely it's a thing. Like I've done like cliff jumping and like roller coasters and the whole 9 yards. I went off like a 20-meter high dive and it was painful. Like I've done all of that stuff, but like, yeah, there was this point like last month where like my wife and her mom and I were going to do like an aerial adventure course to kind of like get over my fear of heights again. And like, I just like bailed. Like the second I saw it, I was like, I'm going to get an iced coffee and listen to like Olivia Rodrigo's new album, like By the Lake, like you guys have fun. And like, it actually felt like super good to like kind of just like set a boundary finally, instead of being like, yeah, like I'm totally cool going off this cliff. Like
good for you.
Like,
yeah.
No.
I totally get that. Yeah. And I totally hear you on the like the distance from the earth affects my fear. Like in a plane, I agree. Like if like buildings are barely like microscopic dots, I'm like, oh, I'm so high up that I don't need to worry about it. But if I'm like looking out of like the Sears Tower or something in Chicago and it's like, oh, I could actually fall.
Yeah.
That's when I start panicking.
No, same for sure. It's different. Yeah, I totally experienced that too. Like in skyscrapers, sometimes like I'll like creep to the edge to like peer out the window, and it's different than a plane for some reason.
Yeah, there's actually is it at the Sears, or I think it's at the Hancock in Chicago, where they like the side of the building, you lean up against the window and then it like goes out, and so you're hovering like it. No. I know, it's terrifying, and I thought I could try it, and I got up there and I was like, your point about setting boundaries, I was like, this is just not
yeah. No, for sure.
Amazing. So the next one is go on a picnic. I'm assuming you've been on a picnic, but maybe I'm not. Okay.
Yes.
I love a good picnic.
Totally had a picnic. Had one like a month and a half ago or something. But yeah, picnics are excellent. I love like the aesthetic of it too. I'm on TikTok all the time, and some people have really aesthetically beautiful picnics with like macaroons and like champagne and yeah, all of that.
Yeah.
Super cool. Love picnics. Recommend
Such a
it if
vibe.
you're watching.
Yeah, if you were just sitting at home wondering like, what am I gonna do this weekend or this summer? Picnic it up. I'm very pro picnic.
For sure.
Kind of on the picnic note, have you ever, so in the book it's try a new food. I'm gonna twist it a little and ask if you've ever tried, and this is maybe putting you on the spot, so it's fine if you don't have a good answer, but have you ever tried a food you were skeptical about and it was like surprisingly good, or at least not as terrible as you thought it would be?
No, for sure. Yeah, I'm totally game to like try. I'm like not a picky eater at all. So I'm always like game to like try new foods.
Yeah.
I've had like octopus before.
Oh, okay.
Or
Yeah.
just like a lot of different kinds of food. Like
Yeah.
I'm trying to think if there was anything where I was like definitely like absolutely not, and like I went for it and it was really good.
Be a good person on like the Fear Factor challenges where it's always like eat a dinosaur egg or some like crazy thing, and the folks that can do it, I'm always like, are you kidding me? I would not be that person. But it sounds like you might be good at that.
I would like attempt it once, yeah, honestly, which is maybe not like a good thing, but yeah, I'm like totally game to like try any new food. Yeah, so it's like probably hard. It's like hard for me to remember because like I've just always been game throughout my life.
Yeah.
But yeah, probably something like that was like a little bit like, yeah, a
Right.
little precarious, but I was like game to try it anyway.
Yeah.
Oh, I had like elk recently, not recently,
Ooh.
like a year and a half ago. That was like pretty
Elk.
tasty. It was an experience.
Yeah. In my head, it would taste like similar to venison, but is that
Yeah.
way off? Okay, so it's pretty
Yeah,
similar.
it's like pretty close to that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. My
Checked it off
brother-in-law.
the list.
Yeah. My brother-in-law's a big hunter, so whenever I go back to Michigan, there's like a refrigerator full of venison. And it's not necessarily my cup of tea, but I respect
Yeah, same. Yeah.
The next on the list was get out of Huckabee. So I'm going to tweak it to get out of your hometown. Were you someone who, I will say for me, especially being like a closeted gay kid, I was definitely like ready to leave my hometown and like rural Michigan for sure. Were you sort of the same in Pennsylvania?
I'm still in Pennsylvania.
Or I meant like your hometown.
No,
sorry.
for sure. Yeah, my hometown was like not, yeah, I think like I wanted to ship out. I like went to New York City for a minute, and then I landed in Pittsburgh to like finish off my college years. And I really fell in love with Pittsburgh. But yeah, I think like anytime you like kind of get like further and further from the city, there's always like this precarious like, will I be accepted here feeling, which is like super awful, but like it's kind of the truth. Yeah, like we just recently bought a house, and I know that was like something going through our heads, like, can we raise children here safely? Which is awful, but it's like a reality when you live in like a place like Pennsylvania where you drive a little bit further than an hour away from any city and things get a little precarious. Yeah, but like back home, it wasn't like, I totally wasn't super bad. I went to a liberal Quaker school, thankfully, for my high school years. And it was super chill there. But yeah, I think definitely I wanted to get out of my hometown. And I know that was definitely an experience that my wife had of, getting out of middle of nowhere, rural Pennsylvania. So
Yeah. And yeah, I think that, and this is something that kind of is explored in the Sky Blues, where it's like hometowns and small towns are complicated, where it's not, I think it's unfair to paint them all as like homophobic and racist, because it's totally not like that. And there's lots of allies and great areas too. But I think it was even more for me, like just feeling isolated by just like the smallness of the town, even the queer stuff aside. I was like, I want to get out there.
No, for sure. I totally felt that too, so that's, it's super relatable.
Have you ever, the next on the list is sleep under the stars. Have you ever slept under the stars? And I guess I'll combine that with the next one of the camping. Have you ever been camping / have you ever slept under the stars?
Yes. Yeah, I've done both. Actually, like at the start of the pandemic, my like wife's brother decided to buy this like the very first Honda, I think it's like an N600 that was like brought over here from Japan, and it was all the way in Colorado. So we did like a road trip all the way out, and it was a lot of camping. I got super bit by mosquitoes, but I'm all about camping. It's super fun. Totally doing like a road trip this summer as well. And I like slept under the stars like I think like a month ago or something. It was like in the back of like our pickup truck, and like, oh man, I think by like 3 a.m. I actually bailed and went inside.
You're like,
I was
this
like,
is
I
enough.
cannot do this anymore. Yeah. My like back was like, we are not having a good time anymore. So
Right. Yeah, the things that I'm like, if I was 19, maybe I'd be down to do
yeah,
this, but not at this phase in my life.
for sure, for sure.
So the next one is, the actual one is Skinny Dip in Huckabee Pool After Hours. That might be TMI for you to answer. Totally respect that. Maybe it's not, but maybe it is. So I guess I'll tweak it to, have you ever swam after hours somewhere you weren't supposed to, either like in a public pool or a hotel pool? Have you ever like broken the pool and hot tub rules?
Definitely. Yeah, I definitely have. And like part of that was like I swam like my entire childhood growing up. So you know, when you're like on a swim team, like you know the lifeguards usually because they're also on the swim team and just stuff like that. So yeah,
Yeah.
I absolutely have. Yeah.
Cool. What about buy a book in another language? I was thinking
Yeah.
about that, which was such a cool point in the book that I really appreciated, and I don't think I ever have, at least not on purpose. 'Cause
Mhm.
I only speak English, unfortunately. So is that something you've done before?
No, yeah, I totally have. I took like French in high school.
Oh, okay.
And I actually have the book. I don't know. Yeah, I actually like have the book from the story, and like
Oh,
it's like
nice.
super old, and like I was able to like get a copy of it. But yeah, I have other books. Oh, this by Vitor Martins, the English version, Here the Whole
Oh,
Time
cool.
came out last year, I think. But when I was in Brazil for the Biennale, I was able to like get a copy of this because the cover is like super cute, and there's like a little flamingo on the back. So I was able to snag that. But yeah, I definitely have a couple books in another language.
Cool. Nice. So there's another really fun scene in the book where they're at Snyder's Orchard, where they are up to no good on the bucket list. So I'm going to kind of tweak that one to, have you ever stolen produce from an orchard? Is that something you pulled from
Oh
your
my
life?
gosh. I actually don't think I have. Maybe
Same, I
like
haven't.
while I was there, like I totally like ate an apple or something, or like ate a peach, whatever I was like picking on that specific day, more than one. I think that's like part of the experience, is like you got to sample the
Right.
wares. Um,
True.
but yeah, no, I like totally have it. Yeah.
Yeah. When I was writing out this question, I remembered I accidentally stole a huge thing of cider from a cider mill once, because I just like put it in a bag and walked out and drove
Right,
home. And I was like,
right.
oh my God, I felt so bad about it, but it's like a 2-hour drive. It was a whole thing. That's for a different call. But I owe a cider mill outside of Chicago at least a few bucks. So
At least
I'll be back at
a
some
few
point.
That's funny.
And then, have you ever stumbled across a 4-leaf clover?
I
Or seen one in
have.
your life? Oh,
Yeah.
nice.
No, I definitely have. Yeah. I feel like they're actually like maybe not as hard to find as people make them out to be.
You're
Like if
like
we're
the
being honest, like I feel like every kid has like had a moment on the playground where they're just like chilling in the grass, like during recess or something, and they're like, oh, yeah. I
Yeah.
have stumbled across them.
I feel like I'm not necessarily I'm not a huge nature, like I appreciate nature, but I'm definitely not the person to walk into a forest and be like, oh, I know that tree and I know that plant. So I've probably stumbled across them too, and just not even like really
Registered it.
realize.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you really have to
exactly.
be like inspecting the grass in order to find them, but they're out there,
Yeah.
plenty of them.
They're
So
there. So my next question, to kind of transition off the bucket list, which was super fun. Thank you for doing that with me. And I don't want to give away any spoilers, but there's obviously a lot of LGBTQ themes in the Lucky List, which I of course appreciated. And I especially love that this book felt like one where you didn't, how do I say this? You didn't minimize the LGBTQ themes for the sake of like straight cisgender people being able to read the book, but at the same time, I feel like anyone can read this book and appreciate the relationships and what happened for what they are, which is, I think, kind of a fine balance sometimes with queer stories. And I think you really struck a great balance between that, and I really love that. So I was kind of wondering, was having it be an explicitly queer story, was that something that was important to you from the beginning? And if so, why?
yeah, I feel like probably. I mean, just like this was my first solo book, and like it was just very much the character like that was based on like my own life and my own experiences, and like how like I went about the world. And I think like even if it wasn't explicitly intentional, like it was just like the story that like I knew how to tell, and like the story that was most reflective of myself and my own experiences. Yeah, and I felt like it just like kind of came naturally because it's what I know, kind of thing. You know, like I understand Emily, I understand like the small Pennsylvania town or growing up in Pennsylvania, and I understand kind of like those feelings of like, you know, thinking like I have to be with this one specific person, or like this is like what my relationship should look like, or this is who I think the world wants me to be, and kind of like balancing that with the experience of like discovering yourself and discovering who you are and what you want, and discovering your sexuality and your relationships and who you want to be with and the kind of people you want to be with. So yeah, that was very much like, I don't think it was maybe like sitting down, I was like, this is going to be a queer story, but yeah, I think it was just like the story that I knew how to tell.
Yeah,
So.
like you were the best person to tell that story, so it makes sense to tell that story. I kind of had like a similar-ish experience. Like this was years ago now, when before I even started The Sky Blues, where I had an idea where I had like a straight girl lead and a queer author. Of a friend of mine asked, like, why isn't, and he asked it so just like straightforward, like, why don't you have a gay lead, like, or LGBTQ lead? And it just made me pause and really like unpack why I didn't. And I think sometimes we feel like as LGBTQ authors and artists and creators, it's, at least I felt at that time, like maybe I couldn't tell a book or a story that had a queer lead and have it be bought or have it be successful, which is so problematic and wrong, because there's such a hungry audience for these sorts of stories. And I, at that time, I guess I just hadn't realized that. And then I, of course, was like, of course I'm going to write queer stories. Like that's why I want to tell the stories I want to tell. But I know it can be tricky at times.
Like so relatable and absolutely so well said. Yeah, that's absolutely, yeah, I totally have had moments like that too, you know, where like I did write 5 Feet Apart and I did write all this time. And then there was definitely a feeling where like, you know, I was writing this queer book that was reflective of my own experiences, and it was my solo debut. And like people are like, had like these expectations about possibly the kind of book that I was going to write. But yeah, then I wrote the book that I wanted to write. That was the best book that I think I could have written. So yeah, that's really interesting and really well put.
It's especially great, I think, in the YA space, because younger readers are, more than any other generation, just open to reading about other experiences, and the way that they're thinking about queer issues and LGBTQ identity is so different even than, you know, my generation. I'm in my 30s now, and so I think it's really cool to be writing in the YA space in this way right now, because as I mentioned, there's definitely a hunger and appetite for these sorts of stories, which is awesome.
So true. So exciting and so true. Yeah. Another reason why I love TikTok and also book talk and all of that. Yeah. It's exactly that.
I know. I got to get on TikTok. It's like,
gotta do it.
I got to commit. I just want to come up with some good ideas first.
Totally.
Before I jump into the platform, but I don't want that to like dissuade me from ever joining. Anyway, I want to get into my TikTok drama.
For sure.
Another thing I loved about the book was the music choices. So you had Billie Eilish and Lorde, and I felt like you already did such a great job just pulling the readers into the scenes and captivating the emotion and the aesthetics of where they are, and really like building that world around Emily. But then the music selections were kind of like the icing on the cake.
I love that.
Really brilliant, bringing people into kind of the emotions of what Emily is experiencing and of the scene. So I'm wondering if that was how intentional you were with the music, if it was something that you really put a lot of thought into. Was it something that kind of just quickly came to you, like, oh yes, a Lorde song would work great here?
No, for sure.
Can you kind of talk about that?
Yeah, I think it was a mix, like definitely like there's like one scene where, you know, they're off on their way to the Huckabee Lake trip and like Blake hands her a headphone. There's a very specific song that's playing in that moment. Yeah. And so it was definitely like a mix of that. A little bit was just like songs that I was listening to when I was writing the book that I was like, oh, these like totally capture like kind of the vibe of everything happening, like a lot of the big emotions. And a lot of it is just like songs that I absolutely love and like would totally just want like on a soundtrack, like playing over this entire book. So yeah, it was totally a mix of that. Just like some favorites, some that like I think really just helped to bring the story to life. And also like, you know, if readers are like, I'm gonna listen to this song, it like probably will somehow like connect back to the book and what's being written on the page, which is super cool.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I loved it. I was so here for all your music choices.
Thank you.
Inspired me to go to my Spotify and listen to a few songs.
That's awesome.
As noted in the chat, if you all have any questions for Rachel, feel free to add them in the Q&A feature in Zoom. If you can't figure out, feel free to just put it in the chat. But if you can figure it out, put it in the Q&A little chat box. And I just have a couple more questions for you, Rachel, and then we can flip over to get some Q&A from people who are tuned in.
And also Robbie, if anybody has any questions.
That's true. I will answer questions. So here's the cover again to anyone who's not familiar, which is also behind you. I'm obsessed with the cover. Even before I was scheduled to do this event, I was like, ooh, I love that. Was this, were you involved in the creation of the cover? Was it something, did you bring the idea to Simon & Schuster, or was it sort of presented to you, or was it kind of a collaborative thing? How did that work?
Yeah, it was definitely like presented to me. Lisa Perrin did the other two covers for 5 Feet Apart and All This Time, and just as like, and also Lizzie Bromley, she did the design, Lisa Perrin does the art, and so talented. So like anytime it's just like, trust the process, it's going to turn out just absolutely gorgeous. Yeah, so I didn't, it was just like, we were thinking like, this was the vibe we were going to go for with like the sunflower and all these different elements. I was like, I love it, this is amazing. Yes, like sold. Totally that kind of thing. But yeah, Lisa Perrin is incredibly talented, also has an Etsy shop and sells like the most adorable prints I've ever seen. And I totally need to get some for my office wall. It's looking a little bland over there, but yeah, no, I definitely did. But I just absolutely like love the flower. It's also very like, you know, classic, like picking a flower, like loves me not, which I think is an element that was totally added in. So I thought that was super cute and really cool.
Yeah, I loved it. And I also looked at with mine, I presented sort of like a mood board of like random images to my editor, and then they came back with the cover of the Sky Blues, and I was just like blown away. So I feel like we both lucked out for sure.
For sure, such a great cover. Yeah, I'm totally that too. I like make aesthetics more than I write sometimes. I like just compile pictures of like whatever I think is going on in the story instead of actually writing the chapter. So
yeah, I should do that. Yeah, because in my head I'm thinking like, of course, where I want it to be, but it might be helpful to pull in some imagery as well. That's a good idea. And then my last question for you is, what's up next? Like, I know we briefly discussed before we started, there's another book on the horizon. So if you want to chat about it, I'm sure people would love to hear about it.
Yeah, and I definitely want you to share about your book coming out next spring. Mine is also coming out spring 2022. It's called She Gets the Girl. It is a YA book. It's a sapphic rom-com, which I'm super excited about, set during the first year of high school, and it follows Alex and Molly, who are polar opposites. You know, they're just like butting heads the entire time from the very start, very enemies to lovers, but they team up to try to help each other get the girl of their dreams. And throughout the process, they end up falling for each other instead. So super exciting. I'm working on it with my wife. So we are co-authoring the book.
Oh, that's right. I did see that. I did see that. Oh my gosh, that's so cool. Wait, can I ask what that process is like? Because I've never teamed up with another writer in general at all for a book. And so I imagine having it be with a partner would even be way cooler or way worse. Like,
no, definitely.
What is that like? I'm sure it's complicated.
For us, it is way cooler. Yeah, it's just been like a really great experience. We like thankfully work well together, like in real life, and then also work life, which is also now intermixed with real life. But yeah, it like goes really well. I think like it was really helpful, like the first draft, you know, like she got like all the revisions and she was like totally like, what am I gonna do? Like the classic, like so much work to do in such a short time frame, which is super exciting. But it was just like, it felt really good to be like, she's usually the like sturdy, like dependable, like rock in our relationship. So it felt really good to be like, I've been around this bend, I know what to expect, kind of thing. So yeah, it's been really fun just like collaborating and working together and, you know, being able to write the story. It's been really cool.
Oh my gosh, I can't wait to read it. That sounds awesome.
And also your story coming out.
Oh yeah. So I have another rom-com, a queer YA themed, coming out in spring 2022. I can't talk. And it's called Blaine for the Win. I'm really excited about it. It's inspired by Legally Blonde, so kind of the bones of the story are it's similar to the story, but it's sort of set in a queer YA space where Blaine gets dumped by his boyfriend Joey, for not being serious enough. Like Joey wants a serious guy. He's like student council president, and he wants to be president of the country someday. So he's very ambitious. And Blaine is not that at all. But after he gets dumped, he wants to then become Joey's predecessor as student council president, because he wants to prove himself to Joey. So you're kind of on that journey with him running for president, and it's super fun.
Oh no, I think you
Lovers.
Okay.
Oh, did I drop?
Yeah, for a quick second, but you're good. You're
okay,
good.
You mentioned yours is enemies to lovers. I love that trope. There's like an enemies to lovers trope in mine as well, and I like eat that up. So I can't wait to read yours.
Can't wait for it. Yeah, I love the like Legally Blonde vibes, which is one of my all-time favorite movies. Super cool. Can't wait to read it.
There's a Legally Blonde 3 movie coming out. I heard a few months
ago.
I
saw about that. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I
can't wait. Sweet, that is awesome. I will send it back to Katie. If Katie, you want to lead the Q&A discussion, if that works.
Sure. Yeah. Sweet. Hi, folks. If you have questions, again, please put them in the chat or in the Q&A function. Like, I feel like I have a bunch of questions, but I would like to let other people ask first, but I can also just kick things off by asking my questions. Robbie was talking a bit about how much young adult readers are open to reading queer stories, whether they themselves are or not. I know I mentioned at the beginning, just talking about like Pride Month and getting to have you both, how little there was intended for younger readers with queer protagonists. And I was curious if either of you have books from your youth that you loved that actually like portrayed somebody who was LGBTQ in a positive way.
Oh, yeah. No, that's really interesting. Yeah, totally. I like have totally talked about like going to Barnes and Noble, and like you have like a list of like, hopefully I'll be able to find this here. And like, it's just like, you find like the Sarah Waters like Fingersmith novel, and you're like 14 in high school, and maybe it's like a little bit out of your age range, but you're like, this is the best we can do. So yeah, I like read that book on repeat. I think it's actually like directly behind the poster, but yeah, that was probably like one of the first ones where I was just like, excellent. Yeah, like I totally like can see myself in this like Victorian era historical crime novel, because there really wasn't much else.
I love that. And yeah, to your point, there wasn't much. I think I read so I read YA when I was younger. I certainly read children's books in YA, but there just wasn't a lot of queer representation. I couldn't find those books, or they just weren't accessible and reaching me where I lived in small town Michigan. And I think the first book that I read that was like explicitly queer protagonist was actually, I think in 2014 or 15, I read Adam Silvera's More Happy Than Not. And I was like, wow, this can be a thing. And there were certainly authors like David Levithan before that writing queer YA in children's books. So I know other authors had, of course, come before that, but I just hadn't read those books. But I will say one book that wasn't explicitly queer, but it had so many coded queer elements and themes to it that I really could like see myself in it, was Auntie Mame, which came out in like the 1950s. Yeah, it came out in the I think it was like 1955, and it was about an orphan boy who came from a very conservative family, and he went to live with his like extremely extravagant aunt in New York City, and they went on adventures together. And like I said, there wasn't anything explicitly queer in it, but it was like so much coded queerness to the story that I really felt like, oh wow, I read it in middle school and I just like could not put it down. And it's since become there's been like a stage adaptation movie. So, which I haven't watched because I'm afraid that it'll ruin the book for me. But I love that book. And just to FYI, it was from the 1950s. So if you read it or watch it now, there's definitely some problematic things from past generations in there. So I don't endorse the whole book, but there was definitely some cool themes that resonated with me as a queer kid, for sure.
I love that. Yeah, to quote Auntie Mame herself, life's a banquet and most poor suckers are starving to death.
Absolutely, I love that.
We have a question from David. Are there any other genres you both might be interested in writing?
That's a fun question.
Yeah, I can take this one first then. So my first book was The Sky Blues that just came out in April. So I feel like I'm brand new to this whole author life thing. So I love the YA space. So I think for now I'm focused in writing queer YA. At least my next few books will be in this space. Certainly never say never. I imagine I'll branch out into adult fiction, and I don't know. We'll see. My next book, book 3, which I can't speak too much about, but it's gonna have some like fantasy sci-fi components, and I'm kind of dipping my toes in that world as well. So yeah, I don't even know if I was supposed to say that. I probably shouldn't have, but but yeah. So I can see expanding out of just YA at some point, and maybe doing a series at some point, but right now I'm good with queer YA. What about you, Rachel?
No, yeah, I feel like same. I've like definitely had like actually a couple middle grade ideas recently. Nothing, obviously, that's just me talking incredibly vaguely. Nobody get your hopes up. But yeah, that, and also I just like really loved like Agatha Christie books growing up. So like I could totally see me at some point, maybe like this fall, like when the weather changes and there's like leaves on the trees and I got like a nice cup of tea being like, it's time to write that mystery novel. But yeah, nothing yet. I'm just really loving writing young adult fiction, and who knows, maybe one day though.
Well, and the nice thing about young adult fiction is that you can do all of those things in it too. I'm like, yeah, being able to incorporate some fantasy, being able to do mysteries. I'm like, the sky's the limit for YA specifically, but yeah, it would be so fun to see those from both of you. I'm looking forward to seeing what comes next, in addition to the books you've told us about, but also the books you're dreaming about currently. Let's see, audience, I think we have time for one more question if anybody else has one. Otherwise, I'll just keep asking my questions. Okay, cool. My turn again. No. For both of you, since you had books that came out in sort of the tail end of the pandemic in the US, presumably you were writing and revising during this last year. How did that affect your process? Did it make it harder to concentrate and get work done? Did it make it easier because there were fewer people to see and fewer obligations? How did this last year affect your work?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, actually, like the Lucky List was completely written. I think I finished up with copy edits for all this time, like in February. And then my editor at Simon & Schuster, Alexa, who's amazing, was like, hey, time to work on the Lucky List. And this was like totally like my escape, I think, over the course of the last year. I like wrote it start to finish during the pandemic, except for like, the opening chapters and stuff. But yeah, it was definitely interesting. I'm like a huge planner. So like I will, if I have a deadline, I will like plot out everything I need to do every single day until I hit that deadline. And it was really interesting just like, getting worn out and just like having these days where like I'd wake up and like really struggle to write, really struggle to put like any words at all on the page. So yeah, it was just like a huge process of like learning to like be cool with revising the schedule and like being cool with like having days where like I couldn't get any work done. It's definitely a bit of a lesson for me though.
Yeah, no, I totally hear that. It was both. I feel like there was both benefits and huge challenges to writing a book in 2020, just because there was obviously, with like every social event getting canceled, I had a lot of time on my hands in the evenings and the weekends. So that was great. The fact that I feel like so many aspects of our lives got kind of simplified during this time. I was able, and I was fortunate enough to still, have a job and have income remotely. So I was able to have more time on my hands to dedicate to revising and to writing and drafting. Um, at the same time, though, I think I'm someone who, and I'm a relatively introverted person, but I still need to have those social interactions to like refuel my creative brain and to get out there in the world and to interact with friends and just do things outside of my apartment. It can throw my creativity off, I think, if I'm just inside day after day after day after day and not really engaging in the world, in the physical world. So I think I felt that after a few months of feeling like, kind of creatively stifled just because of the pandemic. So, but I had a lot of time on my hands to still write. So it's sort of that. It was both a pro and a con. But I got through it and the book's out there. So, and I feel good about it.
No, yeah, that's like super relatable. I'm also like totally the same kind of way where like if I feel like I'm like trapped indoors, like I can't work / like function. Yeah, and that's like literally all there was last year, I feel like. So yeah, that was definitely super relatable.
Well, I'm very impressed that both of you were able to do such excellent work in such trying and strange circumstances. So thank you for writing your books and for spending time with us this morning to talk about them, and to let us know a little more about your books, about your process, about you. It has been such a delight to get to listen to you. Like it makes me want to just pull up a Word file and start writing some young adult fiction after listening to the two of you talk. So I hope other folks are similarly inspired, or are at least inspired to, I don't know, pick up your books and read them. So I will thank you one more time from Chevalier's books. Thank you to Robbie for leading the conversation. Thank you to Rachael for giving us an opportunity to celebrate your new book with you. And thank you to all of the audience for joining us at Chevalier's from wherever you happen to be in the world. I put the links in the chat one more time, and they'll be available on our website. So if you need to like ask a friend if they've already bought their own copy before you buy them one, you've got time to figure that out. Thank you all again. Have a wonderful rest of your Saturday.
Thank you. Thank you both. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much. The Lucky List. Go get it. Have a good one.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.